Arriving to help his mom at work, the janitor's young son washed the foreigner's car. As the man got behind the wheel, he noticed a strange message. A 7-year-old boy, Adam, shuffled his way toward the car service center where his mother worked. He was consumed by guilt. Recently, his mother had been called to his school because Adam had gotten into a fight with a class bully, creating a huge scandal that involved the entire school administration and both families. Adam was often teased by his classmates. He was the smallest in the class and had a calm, non-confrontational nature. His family wasn't well off. His mother worked as a janitor at the car service center, so his clothes and personal belongings often became the subject of ridicule. He had never met his father, who had abandoned his mother early in her pregnancy. "Adam, is that a haul from the market?" his classmates would taunt, pointing at his belongings. "Why don't you just grab clothes off a homeless guy? He'd probably thank you for it," they continued, laughing as Adam's eyes filled with growing anger. That day, Adam reached his breaking point and charged at one of his tormentors, fists swinging. The fight landed both boys in the principal's office, where their parents were summoned. Adam's mom, Glenda, defended her son, knowing he wouldn't lash out without reason. However, the other family was wealthier and held more sway with the school administration. "Glenda, I'm sorry," the principal said, his tone sharp, "but multiple parents have complained about your son. This can't all be a coincidence. Adam seems to be the common denominator." "Exactly," the other boy's mother chimed in. "You need to deal with your little troublemaker, or we'll take more serious measures." "Don't you dare call my son that," Glenda snapped, ready to stand her ground for Adam, despite being outnumbered and outmatched. The women were on the verge of another argument when the principal intervened, reminding them that the children were present and watching. In the end, Adam walked away humiliated, with a warning about expulsion hanging over his head. The incident made him feel even worse, especially since his mother left the meeting looking heartbroken and disappointed. "I came to help you," Adam said with a wide smile when he saw her at the car service center. Glenda was mopping the floors but softened when she looked at her son. "Hello, sweetheart," she said gently. "Sit in the back for now. I'll find something for you to do." In addition to cleaning, the administrator occasionally gave Glenda tasks like washing cars for wealthy clients so she could earn a bit more. Everyone at the center knew her situation and tried to help in small ways. As Adam walked to the back room, he noticed a large black car pulling into the service area. A man in a sharp suit stepped out, talking on the phone. He exuded an air of wealth and importance. Adam realized this must be a high-paying customer and that his mother would likely be tasked with washing the car. Without hesitation, he grabbed a bucket, cloth, and cleaning supplies and headed toward the vehicle. The man, speaking in a language Adam didn't understand, was clearly a foreigner. Determined not to let his mother down and hopeful the serious-looking client might leave a generous tip, Adam set to work meticulously cleaning the car, making sure to leave no spot untouched. Not wanting to let his mom down and sensing that the foreigner could leave a generous tip, Adam worked diligently on the car. Just as he finished cleaning the bumper and was about to move to the wheels, he noticed a strange object lying on the ground. It must have fallen off the bumper. Adam picked it up and examined it curiously, but he couldn't figure out what it was. Being an honest boy, he decided to return the object to its rightful place. Once he was done cleaning the car, Adam took a piece of paper and a marker from his backpack and wrote a note, which he placed on the windshield. "There's something under your bumper," the note read, written in clumsy, childlike handwriting. Despite its imperfections, Adam felt proud of himself. When the job was done, Adam stepped aside, keeping a safe distance. His mom remained unaware of his actions as she was busy cleaning the service area. Adam often washed cars without her knowledge, and although Glenda didn't encourage it, she didn't scold him either. She understood that her son needed pocket money, something she couldn't always provide. She even admired his drive to earn it himself. "Wow, it's spotless," the foreigner remarked with satisfaction as he inspected his car. The man's name was Vincent Patterson, an Italian entrepreneur who owned several vineyards in his home country. His visit here had two purposes. First, to finalize some deals with partners he had only communicated with via correspondence, and second, to reunite with his fiancée, whom he hadn't seen in a long time. As Vincent got into the car and reached for his wallet to tip whoever had cleaned it, a note on the windshield caught his eye. Frowning, he grabbed the note and read it, then retrieved the something mentioned by Adam. Unlike the boy, Vincent immediately understood what it was. A tracking device, he muttered under his breath, his face darkening. Someone spying on me. But who? Several possibilities came to mind. It could be his unknown business partners, whom he had yet to meet in person, or even his fiancée, who might have done it out of jealousy. "Hey, kid, come here," Vincent called, waving Adam over. Adam, who was standing nearby, ran up to him eagerly. "You did a great job." Vincent praised him, pulling out a generous amount of cash from his wallet and handing it to the boy. Adam's eyes widened in disbelief. It was far more than he'd expected. He was about to ask a question when Vincent silenced him by pressing a finger to his lips and pointing to the note. "I did my best," the stunned boy managed to say, clutching the money in his small hands. The man crouched down to Adam's level and spoke softly. "Let's keep this little discovery just between us," he said with a conspiratorial wink. "Okay." Adam nodded vigorously, miming a zipper across his lips to show his promise of secrecy. Vincent chuckled in approval, waved to the clever boy, and climbed into his car. He had no intention of continuing his journey in that vehicle. Parking it in a secure lot, he began searching for an alternative. By that time, Glenda had finished cleaning and was preparing to wash the businessman's car. "But wasn't there a car here?" she asked, puzzled as she looked around. "Mom, I already cleaned it," Adam said proudly. The man really liked it. He said I did a great job. The boy handed his mother a few bills, but Glenda shook her head. "Oh, keep it, sweetheart. You earned it," she said, ruffling his hair affectionately. "I already kept some. This is for you." Adam placed the money firmly in his mother's hand before bounding off toward the exit. Glenda stared at the generous sum in surprise, but decided not to dwell on it. Wealthy clients were common, after all. Unaware of the full story, she and Adam headed home. Meanwhile, Vincent had secured a replacement car. Although it wasn't as luxurious as his previous one, it came without a tracking device. Driving toward his fiancée, he made a quick stop to buy a large bouquet of red roses. "Hello, darling," he greeted her with a smile, holding out the flowers. Sherry Mack, his fiancée, coquettishly adjusted her hair before eagerly taking the bouquet. Her sharp eyes, however, immediately landed on the car he had arrived in. "What is that junker?" she said, narrowing her eyes. "It doesn't suit you at all. Where's your car?" Vincent was momentarily taken aback. Sherry pouted, scrutinizing the replacement car with visible disdain. "Does it really matter what car I came in?" he asked with a bemused smile. Realizing her misstep, Sherry flashed her most tender smile and gently stroked his shoulder. "Sorry, sweetheart," she said, blinking innocently. "Of course, it doesn't matter. I've just gotten so used to your import. I was curious about what happened to it. I worry about you, you know." Moved by her words, Vincent shared everything that had happened at the car service center, recounting the story in detail, including the boy and the tracking device. As he spoke, Sherry's expression grew darker and more serious, her lips tightening with each word. But when their eyes met, she quickly replaced her frown with a sweet, radiant smile. "You did the right thing," Sherry said with effort, her voice tight. "The most important thing is your safety." Vincent nodded in agreement, still puzzled as to who would go to the trouble of spying on him. But he was determined to uncover the truth. As soon as Sherry was alone, she called her brother, her grip tightening on the phone. "Terry, the plan failed." "He found the bug," she snapped, frustration leaking into her voice. "What?" "How?" came the stunned response on the other end of the line. "That's what I want to know," she shot back angrily. "All you had to do was install that cursed device." And now, a child of all things, a child, uncovered it. Terry chuckled at the absurdity. It was indeed ridiculous that their plan had been foiled by a 7-year-old boy. But Sherry wasn't amused. Her nerves were frayed, and it took all her self-control to keep from exploding. "All right, calm down," Terry said with a sigh. "This isn't over. Time to move on to the next part of the plan. Trust me, he'll come to us." "This time, no screw-ups," Sherry hissed, her face hardening. "I'm done with this charade. I want him gone." "Relax, sis," Terry replied confidently. "It won't be long now. Just keep playing the doting fiancé a little longer." After hanging up, Sherry hurled her phone onto the couch and began pacing. Her frustration was palpable. The Dean family, Sherry, Terry, and their 2 other brothers had long viewed Vincent Patterson as an obstacle to their ambitions. His overwhelming success in the wine industry had left their ventures in the shadows. Suppliers flocked to Vincent's Italian vineyards, leaving the Deans with dwindling profits and simmering rage. The romance with Vincent had been part of their grand scheme. Sherry's whirlwind affair was meant to ensnare him emotionally, while Terry and the other brothers positioned themselves as his closest business partners to monitor and control him. Vincent, trusting and oblivious, suspected nothing. But the Deans had grown impatient. Their efforts to sabotage him subtly weren't yielding the results they wanted. It was time for drastic measures. A few hours later, Vincent received a message with an invitation for an urgent meeting. "With pleasure," he replied. "It's about time we discussed the details of our partnership in person." Terry responded promptly with an address, ensuring it was a remote and secluded location. The last thing they needed were witnesses. "Please make it as soon as possible," one of the Deans added. "Our partners are incredibly busy, and gathering them for even an hour is a challenge." "Of course, I understand everything," Vincent replied, pressing on the gas pedal. "I'll be there soon." Terry flashed a predatory grin, glancing at his watch. "In an hour, there will be one less Italian in this world," he confidently announced to his brothers. "And I'll make sure the body is taken care of right away," the youngest brother added. Terry nodded approvingly, rubbing his hands together impatiently. Everything was about to be decided today. Their plan was to lure the foreigner, force him to transfer all his assets to their family, and extract all his bank account details. They aimed to strip him of everything, including his life. Everything was ready. Terry had found the executor and the location. All that remained was to wait for the victim. Meanwhile, Vincent truly intended to arrive at the meeting early. He had canceled all his other appointments for this purpose. However, as he turned the corner, the Italian noticed a solitary boy sitting on a bench, crying bitterly. Patterson immediately recognized that fair-haired head. It was the same boy who had discovered the tracking device in his car. "Hey, buddy, what's wrong?" the businessman asked warmly with a chuckle. "Something happened?" Adam looked up at him with tear-filled eyes. He recognized the man too. The boy had gotten into yet another fight with his bullying classmates, who had been insulting him. Adam couldn't hold back because their taunts weren't just about him, they had insulted his beloved mother as well. The kids mocked Glenda for working as a cleaner, considering her a servant. That was the last straw, and Adam had lashed out at his tormentor right in the middle of class. "They're calling my mom to school," the boy sobbed, "and she'll be upset again." When Vincent stepped out of his car, he noticed Adam had a visible bruise under one eye and that his lip had recently been bleeding. The young businessman sighed deeply, realizing he couldn't leave the boy alone in such a state. So, he asked Adam to tell him everything from the beginning. "That's not good," the businessman said, shaking his head as the child finished his story. "But you know, Adam, I think you did the right thing. Sure, it's not ideal to throw punches at your classmates. However, you were standing up for yourself and your family. That's something to be respected." The boy stopped crying and even smiled. Receiving praise from such a man meant a lot to him. "I think your mom will understand." Vincent patted him on the shoulder. "She can't come to the meeting right now," the boy explained. She has too much work. Her boss won't let her go. Is there really no one else who can come? The businessman frowned. Adam shook his head, indicating that apart from his mother, there was no one else. Vincent returned to his car to retrieve his phone. He genuinely wanted to help and comfort this child who had so timely discovered the bug in his car. He just couldn't bring himself to drive away. Instead, he left a message for his partners, informing them he would miss the meeting. Profitable contracts are great, he thought to himself, but above all, you have to remain human. Hey, buddy, called the Italian, hop in the car. Let's take care of your meeting. Adam immediately bolted towards him and climbed into the back seat. We'll tell everyone I'm your dad, Vincent said with a grin. I'll have a little talk with them, and let's see if anyone dares to bother you after that. The boy smirked mischievously. No one will believe you're my dad, he remarked. Vincent frowned, glancing down at his impeccable suit and understanding the problem. You're right, he agreed. Guess we'll need to make a quick stop. A few minutes later, Adam was greeted by a transformed Vincent. The sharp businessman in a tailored black suit, crisp white shirt, and expensive tie was gone. In his place stood an ordinary working man in worn jeans and a cheap plaid shirt. To complete the look, Vincent donned a baseball cap. Adam burst out laughing at the sight, his mood immediately lifted. Vincent chuckled along. Well, looks like we've already brightened your day, Vincent said, beginning to enjoy the charade. Meanwhile, Vincent's phone kept ringing incessantly with calls from his deceitful partners. The Dean brothers were growing increasingly furious, but there was nothing they could do. Without the tracking device, they had no way of knowing where Vincent was. When Vincent and Adam arrived at the classroom, all eyes turned to them instantly. Vincent could feel the judgment in their gazes, brimming with disdain for someone they assumed was of humble means. How disgusting, he thought to himself, but kept his expression neutral. Instead, the disguised businessman politely greeted the teacher and took a seat at the front of the class. Is that Adam's dad? One of the mothers exclaimed, her eyes wide with disbelief. What a disgrace. Imagine coming to school dressed like that. You can tell he's broke just by looking at that shirt, added another with a derisive laugh. No wonder the kid behaves so poorly, a third chimed in, shaking her head. Vincent heard every word but remained calm, biding his time. The teacher started by discussing the student's academic performance. As it turned out, Adam was one of the top-performing students in the class. However, this fact was quickly glossed over in favor of a lengthy monologue about his so-called behavioral problems. Vincent listened quietly, his calm demeanor masking his growing irritation. When the teacher paused, he cleared his throat and raised his hand. Excuse me, he said, his tone polite but firm. Could you clarify something for me? What exactly are these behavioral problems? Defending himself from bullying? Standing up for his family's honor? I'd like to understand. The room fell into an uneasy silence. The teacher hesitated, and the judgmental mothers exchanged nervous glances. So, are you saying my son is the only one responsible for these fights? The foreigner narrowed his eyes. Well, of course, the teacher replied brazenly, clearly disliking the father from the outset. All the other children here are well-mannered, as are their parents, she added pointedly. They never forget to contribute money for new curtains or bring gifts for the teachers. Unlike your family. Ah, I see now, Vincent smirked. In the next moment, he pulled off the old shirt that had sparked so much gossip and produced a thick wad of cash from his pocket, which he tossed carelessly onto the teacher's desk. You can buy yourself new curtains, a table, a chair, whatever you want, all on me, he said icily. Then his voice dropped to a menacing calm. But if I hear even once more that my son is being mistreated, no one here will be spared. The teacher froze, staring at the money with wide eyes, completely speechless. And what does this have to do with us? One of the mothers was the first to recover, her voice defensive. These conflicts happen between the children. Vincent shot her a piercing glare, making her shift uncomfortably in her seat. Do you think I don't know what kind of conversations you have in front of your children? Start with yourselves. Stop gossiping about everyone and everything, and maybe your kids will behave better, he snapped. With that, Vincent walked out of the classroom with an easy stride, leaving behind a room full of stunned parents and a speechless teacher. Adam watched the scene unfold with wide, admiring eyes. No one had ever defended him like that. His mother had tried many times, but the teacher always managed to overpower her, leaving Glenda to walk away defeated. Vincent, on the other hand, had put every arrogant person in their place. "And that's my dad," the boy declared happily as they left the school. The teacher and parents gawked after them, too shocked to respond. "Thank you so much." Adam threw his arms around the businessman in a heartfelt hug. "You played the best dad ever. That's the kind of dad every kid dreams about." Vincent smiled warmly. The boy's words pleased him, though they carried a tinge of sadness. "Tell me your address," Vincent said. "I'll take you home." Adam thought for a moment, then his eyes lit up with excitement. "Why don't you come over for dinner?" "Mom should be home from work soon," the boy suggested. Vincent glanced at his watch. He had already missed his meeting, so there was no point in rushing anywhere. Besides, he was genuinely curious to meet the mother of a boy like Adam. "Wonderful idea," Vincent replied with a smile. It had been a tough day for Glenda. Not only did she have to clean the entire auto shop because they were expecting an inspection soon, and everything had to be spotless, but to make matters worse, cars kept coming in one after another for a wash. She was happy for the extra work, but by the end of the day, she was so exhausted she could barely move the sponge. Then the rain started. The bus was delayed, and by the time it arrived, Glenda was tired, cold, and completely soaked. She just wanted to eat and relax. Sigh, she thought, I still need to make dinner, as she struggled to open the door to her apartment. She was taken aback when the delicious smell of food hit her as soon as she stepped inside. "Adam," she called out in surprise, heading towards the kitchen. Her long hair, damp from the rain, hung loose, and she pushed it back behind her shoulders. At that moment, she saw an unfamiliar man wearing her favorite apron. In one hand, he was holding a frying pan with pasta, and in the other, a spatula. Adam was sitting nearby, chopping vegetables. "What's going on here?" Glenda asked, her shocked gaze shifting from her son to the stranger. Vincent was equally surprised. He hadn't expected to see such a young woman. She had long, light hair, which, damp from the rain, made her look like a mermaid. The Italian couldn't help but notice that she was quite attractive. "Mom, sit down," Adam ordered. "I'll explain everything." Then followed a long and detailed story about how the businessman ended up at their house. By the end of the tale, Glenda was covering her face with her hands. "I'm sorry you had to go to the school," she smiled awkwardly. "It's my responsibility." She then turned her gaze to Adam. "Adam, next time, come to me. No matter how busy I am, I'm your mother first. I should be the one to solve your problems. And no one else." The boy lowered his head and nodded. "It's no trouble at all," Vincent ruffled the boy's hair. "If anything, it was an interesting experience. The most important thing is that no one bothers your son anymore." "Do you have children?" Glenda asked. She wasn't a very talkative person, but she immediately liked this foreigner, and she felt a warmth toward him. "No, not yet," he replied. "Glenda, would you mind if we switch to a more casual form of address?" "Of course not," she smiled. Adam, who had been watching the exchange, perked up. "Can we eat now?" "I'm really hungry," he complained, hoping the adults would finally stop talking and get to the meal. "You're right," the guest snapped out of his thoughts. "We already have pasta and salad ready, made from my family recipe." They continued talking for a long time, until night fell. Adam went to bed. Glenda hadn't spent such a pleasant evening in a long time, talking to someone. Usually, her evenings were all the same. Exhausted, she'd come home from work, quickly cook dinner, and then go to bed. But Vincent had given her an unforgettable evening. "Thank you," Glenda smiled warmly as they said their goodbyes. And thank you, the Italian replied. It was a real pleasure to meet you. With those words, he left for his hotel. Hours later, when the businessman was already in bed, he couldn't stop thinking about the evening. He had no regrets about sacrificing his business meeting, because otherwise, he would never have met Glenda. Thinking about her, his mind inevitably drifted to Sherry, and everything became clouded. During their last meeting, he had been troubled by how much she was focused on his car. In the beginning, he had tolerated all her whims, but now, he was seriously wondering if she was the right woman for him. With Glenda, he saw sincerity, love, and tenderness in the way she looked at her son, but with Sherry, it seemed like those feelings were completely foreign to her. She never showed anything like that. And now, Vincent was starting to question whether he truly knew her at all. After some time of pondering, he made the decision to break up with Sherry. He realized it was time to end things. He doubted she was the person he truly needed. It was just as his close friends had warned him, meeting someone online would never lead to anything good. His gut feeling told him to end it. Meanwhile, Sherry, as if sensing her fiancé's change of heart, began to act much more aggressively. "Darling, maybe we should go out to a restaurant for dinner tonight. I've missed you so much," she said on the phone. "I can't, sorry, I'm very busy," he replied coldly. "I understand," the girl said obediently, "then come over to my place. I'll be waiting for you, anytime." Sherry didn't give up on trying to lure him in. Especially since her brothers were pressuring her hard, having failed to get Vincent to meet with them. "I don't think that's a good idea," the man continued to resist, before ending the call. "Damn it." Terry fumed with anger. "What else can I do? I'm not going to drag him here by force." The family gathered at Sherry's house, feeling like everything was going wrong. They knew they had to come up with something new, and fast. "Sherry, he has to come to you," Terry said, leaning back in his chair. "He won't talk to us." "Well, you heard him, didn't you?" her sister snapped back. "I'm no longer interesting to him." The room fell silent as everyone started thinking intently. "No matter what we say about him, Vincent is still a good man," the younger of the brothers spoke up. "We can play on his feelings. Ask him for something, tell him it's a matter of life and death, or something like that." After their evening together, Vincent and Glenda exchanged phone numbers. The Italian called her a couple of times to check how things were going at school. "Adam is doing well," Glenda happily replied. "And it's all thanks to you. Thank you for being a father to my son, even if just for that short time." Now Glenda no longer felt the same pain in her heart for her son. Finally, someone had stepped in and stood up for Adam, and no one bothered him anymore. They all understood that if anyone tried to hurt the boy again, his father would come and deal with it. When Vincent heard his phone ring, he was hoping to see Glenda's name on the screen, as they had agreed to meet up that day. However, it was Sherry. The businessman rolled his eyes, wondering if he should even bother answering. "Hello," he finally responded. "I really need your help," Sherry began, her voice trembling with tears. Vincent tensed. His ex-fiancée had never cried in front of him before, so something serious must have happened. Sherry explained that her mother was seriously ill, and she needed a special medication that was only available abroad. "Can you get it for me?" she asked, hope in her voice. "You have so many connections." "I'll try," Vincent promised, immediately getting to work on her request. For people like him, nothing was impossible. So, within 2 days, the necessary medication was already in his possession. He suggested sending it via courier, but Sherry insisted that Vincent bring it himself. "Please," she begged. "I can't forgive myself if something happens to the medication. But I trust you." "All right," the businessman agreed. "I'll be at your place in half an hour." Sherry raised her arms in victory and gave a thumbs up. Her brothers, who were with her in the same room at the time, nodded. The bird was almost in the cage. Before going to his ex-fiancée's place, Vincent called Glenda. "Sorry, I'll be a little late," he warned her. I need to help an acquaintance. Well, if you're far, we can reschedule, she suggested. No, it's fine, Vincent replied. I'm only a few blocks away from you. As soon as Vincent entered Sherry's apartment, he was immediately ambushed. He didn't have time to react, as a treacherous blow hit him in the back. He fell to the ground, and before he could recover, they bound him and sat him in a chair. Sherry stood in front of him, smiling with satisfaction. Behind her, 3 strangers positioned themselves. What's going on? Vincent exclaimed, looking at her. Sherry, what is this? Who are these people? She was about to answer, but Terry pulled her aside and took over the conversation. Terry Dean, he introduced himself, grinning, I won't be shaking hands today. Vincent raised an eyebrow in surprise. My partner, he smirked. What do you want from me? Didn't you try to settle this peacefully? I'm afraid you won't be giving up your assets peacefully, Terry replied. Vincent took a deep breath. Everything became clear. No one intended to cooperate with him, they had been planning to rob him all along. You're in on this, too, the Italian shook his head, looking toward Sherry. Of course, she's our sister, the younger brothers snickered. The puzzle pieces in Vincent's mind started to fall into place. He realized they weren't planning to let him live. Otherwise, they wouldn't have shown their faces. I'm waiting for the passwords, Terry growled, stepping closer. Unfortunately, my memory is too short, the businessman retorted bitterly, so I can't help you. Then I'll refresh your memory. Terry swung his fist with full force, striking Vincent in the face. The Italian crashed to the floor, blood pouring from his nose. Sherry winced, not wanting to watch, and left the apartment. You've got until the end of the day, one of the brothers hissed. If you don't give us the passwords, we'll leave no trace of you. Vincent wasn't stupid, he knew that the only thing keeping him alive were the passwords and codes securely stored in his memory. The brothers took turns standing guard, waiting for him to comply. Because of the punch Terry had landed, Vincent had collided with a sharp corner of the radiator, which, though painfully embedded in his arm, allowed him to cut the rope that bound him. Overcoming the pain, he managed to free himself. His hands were covered in deep cuts, but he knew the apartment well and quickly found the door. The kidnappers were so overconfident they hadn't bothered locking it. When Vincent burst out onto the street, he finally took a deep breath. After being bound for so long, his legs felt weak and he nearly collapsed. Just then, one of the mothers from the school meeting passed by. Seeing Adam's father in such a state, she clutched her heart and quickly turned the corner, pretending not to recognize him. Where do you think you're going, you bastard? One of the Dean brothers yelled, pulling him back. We're not done with you yet. With trembling hands, the woman finally called the police. She felt something bad was happening but didn't want to get involved. Having done her civic duty, she hurried to leave, as if she had never been there. The Italian's actions had seriously angered his enemies. The passwords, Terry repeated like a broken record, or I'll make you regret it. He was holding a kitchen knife, threateningly pointing the edge of the blade at his opponent. There was so much madness in Terry's eyes that it would have been nothing for him to take a life at that moment. But just then, the door to the apartment flew off its hinges. Law enforcement officers burst in. The Dean brothers didn't even have time to put their weapons down, so caught off guard they were. In the end, Vincent managed to escape, and his attackers were taken to the police station. The police even brought Sherry, who had been elsewhere during the attack. But the concerned brothers made sure to inform them that she had also been involved in the conspiracy. As soon as Vincent left the station, he hurried to meet Glenda, even though he was 5 hours late. At first, Glenda was angry and didn't want to answer the phone, but as soon as she saw Vincent, she was stunned in horror. "Oh my God, what happened to you?" she asked in shock, letting him into the apartment. "I got into a little scuffle," Vincent replied with a smile. "Sorry I didn't make it to the meeting." While Glenda was treating his wounds, Vincent detailed how his day had gone. She kept exclaiming in horror, pressing her hand to her chest, while he grew more animated, feeling like a hero. Well, it seems a little better, Glenda said as she looked over her work. She carefully wiped away all the blood, applied a few bandages, and put some ointment under his eyes. Vincent's face looked a little fresher, but still remained in a rather sad state. And still, scars make a man look better, the Italian winked. Glenda rolled her eyes, then suddenly hugged him. At first, Vincent was surprised, but soon he wrapped his hands around her back. In her embrace, he finally felt the peace and serenity he had been searching for so long. "What are you two doing?" came a mischievous boyish voice, and the adults quickly pulled away from each other. As soon as Adam saw the guest's face, he raised an eyebrow and began studying him with curiosity. "Did you two fight?" Adam asked cheerfully. "See, Mom, you always said adults only solve things with words." The guest burst into silent laughter. That boy was something else, no doubt. "All right, Adam," Glenda began sternly, "don't you dare joke around. Uncle Vincent didn't fight with anyone. He just got into trouble. And don't you even think of laughing at him." "Sorry," the boy muttered, though the mischievous spark in his eyes was still evident. Once everyone had stopped laughing, Vincent gave the boy a serious look. It dawned on him that a few days ago, his random encounter with Adam had saved his life. "Thank you," the businessman said sincerely, looking him straight in the eye. "For what?" "For everything," the man waved his hand dismissively. That evening, he didn't go to the hotel. It was late, and Glenda insisted that he stay the night. "You never know what other trouble you might get into. This way, I'll feel better." "All right," Vincent agreed easily. "If my doctor says so, I'll listen." From that day on, their relationship began to develop. The Italian felt an inexplicable pull towards this woman, so he tried to spend as much time with her as possible. He had also grown fond of Adam, and it brought him joy to share evenings together with both of them. Glenda's relationship with the businessman had a profound effect on her. Finally, she remembered that she was not just a technician who worked long hours, nor only a mother who dedicated all her time to her child. She was, above all, a woman who needed to be beautiful and happy. The changes were noticeable to everyone. They were most evident in her wardrobe, where bright, feminine clothes began to appear. And her face had a glow that was almost otherworldly, always adorned with a happy smile. "What's going on with her?" the administrator asked one of the other technicians one day. "I've never seen her like this before." "Don't you know?" the shift worker replied, surprised. "Our Adam found herself a rich prince. That's why she's glowing." "Probably just with him for the money," the administrator shook his head. "Of course," the woman answered confidently, "you have to live somehow. You can't get far on her salary. And she still has a son to raise. So, she's decided to compromise her principles." Their conversation quickly spread throughout the entire auto repair shop. Within a couple of days, it seemed like every other person felt it was their duty to discuss Glenda's personal life. This situation was complicated even more when one of Adam's teachers came to the car wash, and she, too, became a witness to the gossip. "Excuse me," she interrupted the conversation between two employees, "but are you talking about Glenda?" The two girls nodded eagerly. "Do you know her?" one of them smirked. "Yes, my son is in her class," the client explained. "Oh, that Adam, he's quite a handful, always getting into fights with his classmates." No surprise there, Glenda's colleague waved her hand dismissively. "With a mother like that." The teacher perked up, listening intently. The two women, with a little encouragement, proceeded to fill her in on all the gossip circulating in the auto shop. It should be noted that the truth in these stories was about 5%, while the rest had morphed into such a web of exaggerations and fabrications that it could have easily served as the plot for an entire TV show. The fact that Glenda had started dating Vincent was presented as though she were a gold digger. They claimed she offered to wash cars as a front, only to later provide other services for an additional fee. What's more, they all agreed, without exception, that she had been doing this for quite a long time. The teacher was so shocked that, later that same day, she contacted the principal. Henry, we have to do something about this, she said anxiously after recounting everything she had heard at the auto shop. Can you imagine the kind of influence such a mother could have on her child? Adam needs to be rescued immediately. Of course, Margaret, the principal hastened to agree. I'll call a staff meeting tomorrow and we'll discuss it. I'll see what the other teachers have to say. While Glenda was enjoying her new life, the fate of her parental rights was being debated at the school. Most of the teachers were leaning toward reporting the matter to Child Protective Services and letting them decide what to do next. Henry was very concerned about the school's reputation, particularly his own. The last thing he wanted to do right now was deal with a morally questionable mother. So, he happily passed the responsibility to the relevant authorities. If it were up to him, he would have expelled Adam retroactively to avoid any potential trouble. But with each passing day, the story gained more and more traction, and as the principal, he couldn't remain inactive. These rumors quickly reached Vincent, who was deeply shaken. To him, Glenda was the kindest, most sincere person he knew. And now, it turned out that people were saying these things about her. Listen, buddy, you've only known her for a couple of weeks, his close friend said on the phone. So, anything is possible. You know how deceptive women can be, right? Vincent sighed deeply. So what do I do now? He asked in despair. He was so in love, but these rumors wouldn't let him rest. Why not hire a private investigator? His friend suggested. He'll gather all the info about her. Then, you can make your decision. Vincent thought this was a good idea, so he soon hired someone to look into Glenda's past. When she was called into the school and confronted with accusations about being immoral toward her own son, Glenda was so shocked that she couldn't speak at first. Are you out of your minds? She finally managed to ask. What kind of immoral behavior? Where's all this coming from? Everyone's talking about it, the principal replied, egged on by the teachers. People talk about a lot of things, and they even write on fences. Should we believe everything now? Glenda tried to reason with him. What grounds do you have for these serious accusations? Glenda, the man said, losing his patience, we've already contacted Child Protective Services. They'll investigate everything. If you're truly innocent, you have nothing to fear. As they spoke, a small group of teachers gathered nearby and began discussing what had happened. A new rumor quickly spread through the school that Adam Rivera's mother might lose custody of him. Glenda left the school beside herself with rage. Someone had slandered her for no reason, and now she would have to endure numerous inspections to prove that she wasn't a criminal. The thought of losing her son made her hands go cold, and her heart started pounding wildly. It was her greatest fear because Adam was the center of her entire world. Vincent, citing that he needed to work, headed to the hotel. In reality, he had a conversation waiting there with a private investigator who had been actively studying Glenda's life for the past few days. So, what did you find? Vincent asked, noticeably anxious. He wanted to know everything about his beloved, but at the same time, he feared she might disappoint him. The detective gave a detailed report, but there wasn't much of interest. Glenda was an ordinary woman born into a poor family. She later went to a vocational school, worked for a company for a few years, and after a series of layoffs, she had to take a job as a cleaner. Is there anything more substantial? Vincent asked impatiently. What about her personal life? Her personal life was also not very eventful. In her entire life, Glenda had only dated 2 men, one of whom was Adam's father, but he had abandoned her several years ago and now lived in another city, having no contact with the child. She had never been seen with anyone else. She definitely didn't have any relationships with clients? Vincent asked, eager to know. Never, the detective replied confidently. In fact, she hardly interacted with them at all. The payment is handled by the administrator, and she only washed the cars while they sat in the office. Vincent exhaled. It turned out he had been right about her. However, relief was quickly followed by a deep sense of outrage. Glinda was as pure as an angel, but the trail of the most disgusting and filthy rumors behind her made Vincent want to destroy whoever had dared to spread them. One more task, the businessman said coldly. Find out who started these rumors. When Vincent returned to Glinda's apartment, he found Child Protective Services there, inspecting every corner of the apartment, checking the conditions in which Adam was growing up. Adam clung to his mother, understanding what the visit could mean for him. Please, don't take me away, the boy pleaded. I love my mom so much. Sweetheart, it's okay, Glinda smiled, trying to reassure him. Everything's fine. You go to the kitchen, there's a delicious pie waiting for you. With a heavy sigh, Adam reluctantly walked away. You know what? Cut out this little theater, Vincent rolled his eyes. You clearly see that this woman has been accused without any grounds. Regardless of that, we are doing our job, the plump woman wearing glasses replied. So please, let us work. Vincent could no longer stand to watch. He handed the Child Protective Services a detailed report on his beloved's life so they could see for themselves the truth about her lifestyle and stop accusing her of things that made no sense. Well, the social worker said thoughtfully, we really don't have any more reason to stay here. I can see now that the child is growing up in a healthy environment. With that, she left. Glinda's innocence had been fully proven. When it was over, she stood there, numb, not knowing whether to feel relieved or devastated. She was so shaken by the whole ordeal that she didn't even understand what emotion she was supposed to be experiencing in that moment. Vincent wanted to embrace her, but Glinda stepped back, putting a few steps between them. You doubted me too, didn't you? She asked sadly. Otherwise, why hire a private detective? Vincent sighed deeply. He didn't feel proud of his actions. Yes, you're right. I had some doubts, but they've all been cleared up now, he replied, sounding genuinely remorseful. Then why didn't you come to me? Glinda continued, her gaze heavy. If we're in a relationship, shouldn't we trust each other? Otherwise, what's the point of all this? Her gaze was so intense that Vincent felt a knot in his stomach. I'm sorry, he said quietly. You're absolutely right. I shouldn't have done that. Glinda shook her head. Lately, everything had become so overwhelming for her that she just needed some time alone to process it all. Leave, she whispered. Vincent opened his mouth to argue, to beg her for a chance, but she raised her hand in a clear signal that all his words were unwelcome. He had no choice but to leave silently. With a heavy heart, he gave her the space she needed. Desperately, he wanted to call her, but each time, he held himself back, fully aware of how badly he had messed up. But even though Vincent stayed away, he didn't remain idle. He ensured that the administrator and everyone involved in spreading false rumors about Glinda were fired. He also donated a substantial amount of money to Adam's school to fund a major renovation project. Since summer was approaching, there was plenty of time before September. However, before making the donation, Vincent had a stern conversation with the school principal. I really hope no one dares to spread any more dirty rumors about the Rivera family. Otherwise, you won't see the renovation, not even in your wildest dreams, Vincent said firmly. Henry swore that he had already put a stop to any such gossip after the call from Child Services. The principal was eager to secure the funds, so he did everything he could to keep the foreigner happy. I'll fire anyone who dares say anything bad or even think ill thoughts, Henry responded, sounding as serious as a soldier on duty. Vincent nodded in approval. He was now determined to defend his beloved woman's honor to the end, even though she was still angry at him and unwilling to speak to him. It was also decided that a separate building would be constructed next to the school, housing a sports complex. That way, the children could not only engage in physical education but also take additional classes. Hey, kid, Vincent smiled when he saw Adam at school. The boy rushed to him, having already come to see Vincent as a father figure. He hugged him tightly, showing how much he had missed him. How's Mom doing? Vincent asked, trying to keep his voice as light as possible. Not so good, the child sighed. She's always sad, barely smiles. When are you two going to make up? I really hope it's soon, Vincent muttered, pursing his lips. He walked back and forth in his hotel room, which had become unbearable to him in recent days. Just a few minutes ago, he had called Glenda, but she hadn't picked up. The silence was driving him crazy. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. I don't need anything, Vincent yelled, thinking it was a waiter offering dinner or something similar. However, the knocking continued. Cursing under his breath, he opened the door. I was just... He didn't manage to finish the sentence because, instead of the usual waiter, there stood a young, blonde woman. Are you sure you don't need anything? Glenda smiled playfully, leaning against the doorframe. Vincent let out a loud sigh. Without saying a word, he stepped forward and embraced her tightly. Glenda responded in kind, both of them needing the warmth of this embrace. I've been thinking a lot, Glenda said when they were inside the room. And I've come to the conclusion that we shouldn't break up over such a small thing. It's not a small thing, Vincent sighed, but I'm so happy that you were able to forgive me. Glenda smiled, gently brushing her hand across his cheek. I love you, she mouthed silently, her lips barely moving. Vincent pulled Glenda close and kissed her tenderly. A few days later, they decided to get married. They wanted to hold the wedding in Italy, so Glenda could meet Vincent's family and get to know more about his life. The trip became the first vacation for both Glenda and her son. Their eyes sparkled as they looked around, amazed by the beauty of Rome. Vincent personally guided them through the city, showing his favorite spots. The wedding was intimate, attended by only the closest family members, which made it incredibly warm and filled with a true family atmosphere. Vincent's mother adored Glenda, and even more so, she adored Adam. The elderly woman had always dreamed of grandchildren, so it didn't matter to her that the boy wasn't her biological grandson. On the day of the wedding, Glenda wore a light, flowing dress. Her hair blew in the wind, and a gentle, serene smile played on her lips. On the day she became Glenda Patterson, it felt as though she had been born anew. Glenda decided to learn Italian. It was important for her to speak the language of her beloved. Are you sure? Vincent asked when she told him her decision. As far as I know, languages are much harder to learn when you're an adult. I'm not afraid, Glenda smiled. I got lucky with the teacher, and I believe there won't be any problems. Then, they set off on a journey across Europe. Vincent believed it would be beneficial for Adam to see how other countries live and experience different cultures. The man also decided to take an active role in the boy's education and personal development. Now, Adam had a good father, one who forbade him from washing cars and swore to do everything he could to ensure a bright future for him. It's so great that you came into our lives, Glenda said one morning as they greeted a new day in Paris. Thank you, my Lady Patterson, Vincent smiled at his wife, looking at her with pure affection. If you enjoyed the story, please support it with a like and a comment. All the best to you.